Hello and welcome to A Slice of Pie CES 2020 edition. This week is all about the CES trade show and all of the insanity that has transpired there. Now, unlike the rumors, we actually have confirmations on these products and they were there to show. So let's kind of dive into it because we've got quite a lot to talk about. Starting off in alphabetical order, AMD actually announced quite a bit. Nothing spectacular like their new, the 5900 XT that people were thinking about, but rather some stuff that we knew was coming. The 64-core Threadripper processor will be hitting the market in February. That's right, it's only a couple months away, and that's 64 cores, 128 threads in a consumer processor. If you can consider a $4,000 processor consumer, I'd consider that more the prosumer space. But either way, kind of awesome that it's coming out. They did also show off and talk about the 5600 XT. The 5600 XT is actually slightly cored down 5700 that is actually designed for 1080p gaming and to take on the 1660 Ti and 1660 Super, which I believe the Ti is better than the 1660 Super, but I digress a little bit. It's really there to cater to a very specific market, and at a price point of $269, that's not a bad market to be in. In fact, actually, if I do any upgrades to GamerGuts' PC in the near future, that's actually probably the GPU that I would aim for her to get her off of Polaris and on to Navi. We also are getting their new 4000 series APUs in laptops. Now, these laptops are actually, well, interesting because AMD's presence in laptops has been all but minimal up until now. Now we're looking at laptops that might actually compete with Intel, causing Intel to possibly even drop their prices there, which is a good thing because the laptop market is currently extremely overpriced. The Razer Blade Pro that I'm actually using over here as a secondary display to actually look at my script and stuff was a $2,000 laptop. And if I could have bought something cheaper, I would have. And it looks like that might happen in the near future as AMD's new APUs are going to compete directly with the i7s and the i9s that you can currently buy in a laptop. With up to 8 cores and 12 threads, that's not a bad deal. And we already know that AMD's APUs are a bit more capable. Finally, for AMD at least, we do need to talk about an interview that happened with Lisa Su this Wednesday. She actually came out, and I think it was actually multiple AMD executives came out and answered questions for the press. And they touched on a lot of different things, including though those rumored big Navi cards. A couple of things were confirmed. One, they're slated for a 2020 release. We don't know much about them. We're probably going to hear about them maybe, I want to say E3-ish. There's 2 tech conferences back to back, and AMD did have an E3 presence last year, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's when they announce them. And we did hear that they're going to support ray tracing, which, again, pretty awesome. Now, they did say Navi cards in 2020, and while the current Navi cards don't support it on a hardware level, they definitely can support it from a software level. So I don't understand if AMD is going to just be like, here you go, or if they have a better plan in place to slowly weed it out. There could be dormant cores, but I highly doubt it. On the Navi cards, they pretty much squeezed as much performance as possible out of that. Moving on from AMD though, we've got Intel, and Intel has at least one interesting thing to talk about. They did show off a little bit of their laptops and they were okay, but the cool thing is the new socketable NUC. Now, the NUC PCs are cool because they run essentially laptop hardware in a sort of pseudo desktop environment, and they're cool because they're like little low power PCs that don't take very much to run. Some people have even made them into portable PCs, and that's kind of something that I would want to do if I got a hold of one of these NUCs. The new ones are actually 2 PCIe with a PCIe slot underneath on the bottom. The intention for this is not to slot it into an existing PC, but rather to use a daughter board to give it a full GPU, which is kind of awesome. And I can actually see a very good use for this. Picture a portable handheld like console that you dock and all of a sudden it's running like an RTX 2080 Ti or a RX 5700 XT. Like, you could literally take this handheld experience and just boom, make it awesome. So I kind of want to get my hands on this thing because it's cool. It's cool tech. But I'm not going to use it the way that Intel wants it to be used. But Razer actually has more details on their website about this because they're one of the partners that Intel is using. The Razer Tomahawk is a super small form factor PC, about the same size as one of these. This is actually their GPU enclosure, and the Tomahawk is more or less one of these. Actually, I think it's about the same size of this. So, that's kind of cool. They also, speaking of Razer, announced a racing chair thing that they're working on. Cool. Not my cup of tea right now. I would love for it to be my cup of tea, but I don't have enough space for it. But still, rather cool nonetheless. Also, Razer did show off some more Razer Blade Pro laptops, of course using the new Intel processors. Razer pretty much was all of Intel's presence at CES so far. And they've also announced, and I don't know how I missed it, a new PewDiePie headset using his new style, and not the Krakens, but rather their more expensive line. So that was also pretty kind of cool. Essentially, Razer did a little bit, but they were all of Intel's presence, and everyone else pretty much was rocking AMD. There was a PlayStation conference, and I kind of just want to talk about how lame it was. They showed a new PlayStation logo, and that's it. They didn't show the console yet, which everyone thought since the Xbox Series X was announced that PlayStation was going to announce their console in suit, but they did not. So yeah, that's PlayStation. Lian Li's suite was actually kind of interesting this year. Lian Li actually makes some of the coolest water cooling PCs around. And the O11 Dynamic has kind of become like a staple of PC building. So it only makes sense for them to release another new O11. And this time it's smaller, but not much smaller. It's a little bit smaller. The cool feature though is that this can support ITX up to ATX, which is standard for cases, but the way that this one does it is it has a swappable motherboard tray that extends out. You actually get more water cooling potential with a mini ITX. You have the option to build up to a full ATX system inside that case, which is actually kind of awesome. The flexibility there is cool, and the fact that it's part of the O11 Dynamic line, again, pretty cool stuffs. Lian Li is also releasing this really cool clipped together RGB fan. Now the fan blades themselves aren't illuminated. It's actually through these little RGB strips along the side of the fans that actually run from side to side. So as you clip them together, they're able to kind of daisy chain themselves. It's a really cool idea, and it's actually one of the more interesting implementations of a mono fan design that I've ever really seen. You can daisy chain up to 6 of them without a problem. Granted, most radiators won't go as high as 6, so at 4 max, that's not bad. They do seem to be designed with radiators in mind. It seems to be kind of like a good fan accessory for, say, the O11 Dynamic and its multiple radiator support. And then finally for Lian Li, they actually are releasing a new LAN Cool 2 or LandCool 3.1. They're still working on the name, but it's a mesh variant of the new LandCool that just came out recently that has been vastly popular. This new mesh version will actually focus on even more airflow, giving you sort of the best of both worlds. You get the Lee design of what might actually be one of the best sub $100 chassis, but you also get excellent airflow. Instead of all of the stylistic stuff. You do lose some RGB function, so you will have to choose between one or the other, but at a $90 case, that's not a bad proposition. The only competition I really see them facing in that market is something like the Meshify, which only supports up to mini ATX, and the LandCool supports full ATX. Corsair actually had an interesting presence because it's not just Corsair, it's Origin, and it is Elgato and SCUS controllers. And because of that, they kind of merged everything into one in what might be described as the coolest, weirdest PC that I will never buy. It is through Origin PC, and it is a PC and a console in one. You can get it outfitted with either an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, and it even comes included with a capture card, allowing you to have one computer for ultimate console capture, which is kind of awesome. This all-in-one setup, of course, is complemented by Corsair's suite of Elgato peripherals and controllers. In fact, actually, they added macro keys, or the added macro keys to Corsair keyboards are also now capable of controlling Stream Deck features, which is through Elgato. Corsair's actually really leveraging these multiple brands, and they're kind of just like clicking together in a very cool way, and I say keep it up. They also showed off a gigantic, I really do mean it, gigantic air cooler. This thing is massive, but the unique feature is that the fans can actually slide up a little bit if you're running into RAM clearance issues, which is pretty cool. This cooler, though, does cover all of your RAM slots, which will mean that like RGB and stuff is gonna be, you know, subdued, but the actual cooler itself looks pretty dope, and as a high-end air cooler, I dig it. It actually competes with stuff like the Dark Base and the Noctua Giganto. I don't even remember what it's called. Noctua, your naming sucks, but your fans are awesome. And then finally on Corsair, and the reason that there's an IQ logo back there, you can actually see it, IQ logo back there, is because they finally made a step that is kind of important. The whole reason I stopped using my Asus motherboard is because the RGB software sucked, and I switched to MSI because MSI's less intrusive motherboard software worked very seamlessly and worked with Razer products. That functionality is still expanding and is getting better, but Corsair iQ might give it a run for its money, as it now can control Asus motherboards and products connected to that Asus motherboard. It is going to have to grow a little bit more. I think the graphics card still cannot be controlled by the by iQ, but the RAM, like all of the RAM manufacturers pretty much make it so that like you can address the RAM in other software. Meaning you can run iQ, you have to still have Aura installed, but you can run iQ instead of Aura, which iQ has a lot more functionality than Aura ever did, and it actually makes it worth it to run iQ. Now, iQ is the most intensive RGB software aside from CAM, but, and there's a huge but here, the Commander Pro makes it a very tempting offer, because you can run up to 6 RGB fans off of the same Commander Pro. It makes it so that you only have one cable run going to this one specific thing, and realistically, that actually works out pretty well. The only problem is, of course, the Commander Pro is massive. So, digressing a little bit, cool stuff. I might play with it in the near future. Alienware. I can't believe I'm talking about you. They made a Nintendo Switch, Like, it is like legit a Nintendo Switch. In fact, actually, it might even be a Switch underneath there, but they said it's running Intel hardware. But if you, some of the close-ups of that system look very, very familiar. It might just be that they just kind of copied the design and copied the shell, but at the same time, remember how I said the whole thing about the whole NUC, and like that's kind of what they're doing. They're just taking like a NUC and they're slapping it into a handheld console. I like it though. I really do. I kind of really want to make my own though. So probably not this year because I won't be able to afford something like a 3D printer to create like the shell, but I might do it in the future. So put a pin on that. Dell also did show off some folding laptops. One was like a Samsung Galaxy Fold and it folded up and it was like, okay, it goes from little screen to big screen, whatever. The one that actually interests me is the one that actually had a hinge, 2 separate screens, and like this cool keyboard function where you could slap the keyboard on and then like the screen adjusts to it and then you can move it up and then it creates a trackpad. I actually think that thing is one of the most interesting implementations of the dual screen that I've ever seen. And because of its pen functionality, you can effectively use this thing as kind of like an artist portfolio type situation, and that's what I like about it. It's kind of a crappy laptop and a crappy tablet, but a great drawing tablet. So you kind of get like a very interesting mix. Of course, it's still a prototype and it could be awesome. Could be. But I love the concept. I really do. And I kind of have been wondering why the whole folding phone thing hasn't just gotten rid of the middle piece and just done seamless screen to screen, like clipping and stuff. Digressing though, that was those two, the Alienware, and that was like the coolest thing I think Dell showed off at their booth. Fantex booth this year was not nearly as interesting, but it did have a couple of distinctive features. They are releasing the Enthoo Pro 2, which is a, not the Lux 2, they changed the name to like 7, what did they change the name to? 719. They changed the name to the 719 because Thermaltake said it's a little too close to their name, Thermaltake. That's weird, but still. But the Lux 2, now 719, yeah, that rolls off the tongue, Fantex, is essentially getting a re-release as the Pro 2. The Pro 2 is actually going to be $70 cheaper though, taking it out of the $200 range and into a more affordable area. You get the same massive internals, but they cut down the RGB flash and it looks cool. I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't look horrible, just not the kind of case that I personally would be building in due to the constant compromise that you have to deal with on it. Like, yes, it can hold like 10 hard drive slots and it can hold 2 power supplies and it can do a ton of radiators, but it can't do all of them at once. Oh, and it can do 2 systems, but you can't do 2 systems with 2 power supplies, which means you end up paying for like this super expensive power supply. So yeah, digressing. It's a cool case design. I personally won't be using it, but it is nice to know that they're dropping it down to like the $120 range, I think is what they said, $130. So that's kind of cool. They also showed off through their sister brand, their like cheap brand, their cheaper brand, what looks like a new Mac Pro with its cheese grater front. And I think that that is phenomenal. Speaking of Thermaltake, oh, Thermaltake, this year you actually did something new instead of stealing other people's designs. I'm actually kind of proud of you. Granted, one of those designs is very interesting. It looks like an Apache TAC helicopter. A younger me would have really digged this case, I'm not gonna lie. Like, a younger me would have been like, yes, I want this one case in particular. I've used Thermaltake cases in the past. They always have this sort of like edgy look to them, which isn't a bad thing. They're actually not terrible cases. They're nice. Sometimes. On their low end, they can get kind of crappy. But then they also have Thermaltake Premium, which is like not. So it's like really weird, that brand. But speaking of premium, their water cooling, they got a new distro case, which is based off of their level 20 case, I think it is, and it looks amazing. The whole case is just a giant, and I really do mean it, giant distribution plate. You mount your hardware to the distribution plate and then that takes it where it needs to go. It's just, it's cool. I do love it. It's their open air test benchy looking case is one that I kind of want to get my hands on as a test bench. But doing it with like the distribution plate might be kind of crazy. I kind of like the idea. We'll put a pin on that one. They also showed off some pretty nice RAM, actually. I can't believe Thermaltake is making RAM, but it's not bad. It does look a little bit like Trident Z's, but they've incorporated their own flair, which makes it not quite the same, so yeah. They do also have a version of it. It's the Tough RAM series is the name of the RAM. The Tough RAM Z's, which are even closer to Tridents, but they're thinner, and yeah. Either way though, cool concepts are coming out of them. They really are diversifying and actually making some stuff that's like to their brand. And then finally, we're gonna talk about a couple of like really small things. 360 hertz monitors are coming. Now, I am just trying to get up to 144. My next monitor is gonna be 144 hertz, and I think I'm gonna do an ultra wide instead of the 2 monitors and just spend more money on one instead of spending, you know, a lot of money on 2. But digressing, 360 hertz. Like, I saw a 240 hertz screen the other day and I was like, oh, this looks so good, which is why I'm trying to get up to higher refresh rates now. But I can't even imagine how incredible a 360 hertz monitor is. Now, it's not gonna be cheap because Asus owns the royalties to it, and yeah, they've worked exclusively with NVIDIA and the panel maker to make this monitor work as well as it does. So that's gonna be a pricey one. But that wraps it up. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, you can leave a like, comment, subscribe. I think I've maintained eye contact with the camera a lot better now that this is a new setup, by the way, guys. Like, I got my 3 lights on me, I got the backlight, I've got my screen, and then I got another screen right here. This is my blade. It's off camera, but it's also going from the camera to this so that I can see myself and see that it's focused. So awesome stuffs here and working on stuffs, but I'm your ADHD host, Wolfie. Thank you guys again. Wolfie out.